Hey guys, it's Shara from Woodshop Diaries, and a few months ago you may remember that I built my dad some custom cabinets for his closet. Obviously, I wasn't going to get away with not also doing mom's closet, so here we are. In this video, we're going to be building out some custom cabinets for mom's closet that are very different than dad's because one, I don't like building the same thing twice, and two, we lived and learned a few things the first time around that I didn't want to repeat this time. We'll discuss all the things throughout the video, but for now, let's dive in and get building. When I shared my dad's closet video, I showed you guys a little bit about how I plan things out. I figured I would do that again here because this time was a bit different, mostly because I was kind of winging it. So my mom and dad have his and hers closets. They're both the same shape and the same size, but I didn't think they needed to be identical. Dad pretty much knew what he wanted with his closet, so we went into building that with a pretty good plan of where we were headed. Mom, on the other hand, did not know what she wanted, so she left it up to me to kind of figure it out. Great. So this is the general shape of the closet. This wall is about 74 inches long, and this wall is about 64 inches. I decided to keep things similar to Dad's closet and that I'll fill this longer wall with cabinets and then place another cabinet here in the corner with some space in between. But because Mom has way too many shoes, I'm going to also add some slim shoe racks on this wall to maximize shoe storage. But that also means that this cabinet can't have drawers because they won't be able to open if I have something here. So if I wanted to add drawers anywhere, the best place was going to be in a cabinet somewhere in this area. So if you saw my dad's closet video, you'll know that when we got ready to install his cabinets, I discovered a floor vent that I hadn't noticed previously when I was measuring because it was covered in a pile of clothes. Because Dad. So I knew to look for that this time around with Mom's closet, and I decided to do a wall-mounted cabinet in that area so that we didn't have to deal with rerouting the floor vent like we did in Dad's closet. So my plan was to build a wall-mounted hanging cabinet here, then I'll add a floor-mounted cabinet in the middle with more hanging and drawers at the bottom. By the way, I made this one floor-mounted just because of the weight of the drawers. I thought it would be best for it to rest on the ground. I opted to make the rest of them wall-mounted because, to be honest, I didn't want to deal with cutting away any more baseboards. Then I'll fill the leftover space here with some box cubbies for shelving. On the other side, Mom will need a place for hanging longer dresses, so I'll build another wall-mounted cabinet with a tall space for hanging, and I'll add more shelving at the top and at the bottom. Honestly, these cabinets are going to be really easy to build. I just hope that they're what she needs because I'm just guessing. This entire closet, well, everything except for the shoe racks, but we'll get to that part later, was built using plywood. I ended up using 4 sheets of 3/4 inch birch plywood to make these cabinets, which really wasn't too bad. At 80 bucks a sheet times 4 plus tax, it's roughly 350 bucks in lumber because I know everyone always wants to know the cost. So the first thing I did was start ripping my plywood into strips to build the cabinets from. I cut these about 15 inches wide, so I got 3 per sheet plus a thin piece that will work perfect for the supports. You can find the full cut list and the diagrams in the printable plans, but I'm basically building 3 main cabinet boxes. I opted not to add a face frame to these, so I edge banded the front edges before assembling. Honestly, some days I'd rather build face frames and some days I'd rather edge band. Mom just happened to catch me in an edge banding mood, so I built these cabinets frameless. So first, I built the double hanging rod cabinet, which is essentially just 2 side panels, 2 shelves, and 2 support strips along the back so that I can secure it to the wall since it will be wall mounted. As you can see, I used pocket holes and screws to assemble, and I know it doesn't look like much just yet, but I'll come back shortly and add the rods and it'll make more sense. Next, I built the floor-mounted cabinet, the one with the drawers. So for this, I needed 2 sides, 3 shelves, and 3 support strips. Actually, after second thought, I also need 1 more strip to use for a toe kick. So I built this cabinet to be about 7 foot tall. Since the ceilings are 8 foot in the closet, this gives me plenty of room to get it inside and turned upright, and it still allows about a foot of storage space on top once it's in place. So in this cabinet, I left a large open section in the bottom to put the drawers, and then I had a section in the middle for a hanging rod, and then a cubby type shelf at the top. One thing I love about building cabinets for closets is that they're generally just huge boxes, and huge boxes are super easy to adjust, modify, and customize however you want. So if you didn't need the extra hanging rod, this entire top section could just be shelving. And if you didn't need drawers, you could make the bottom section for hanging. Mix and match, however, it's literally a giant box made to fit whatever you need to store. I went ahead and added drawer slides into the bottom section of this tall cabinet, 2 shallower drawers at the top and then 2 deeper drawers at the bottom. But before going ahead and building those drawers, I wanted to finish building the cabinet boxes. That way I can just use the leftover plywood for the drawers. So this third cabinet is the one that I made for hanging longer items like dresses. But it was at this point that I remembered that Mom had a ton of sweaters and she probably needed some shelving to put them on. So far, the only shelving that I've really given her is the small cubby on the top of the last cabinet. So for this one, I added a cubby shelf on the top and a cubby shelf on the bottom. The tall middle section can be used for hanging, and because this cabinet is also wall mounted, I needed to add support strips along the back to be able to secure it to the wall. And just like that, the majority of this project is pretty much done, though I know it may not look like it. So at this point, I switched gears back to the drawer boxes. So I had a brain fart. The plywood strips that I cut for the drawer boxes, I cut them a little too narrow, which means that the drawer boxes are now a little shallower than I intended for them to be. Anyway, I had planned on doing dados in these drawer boxes to install the 1/4-inch plywood bottoms, which is how I usually build drawers. But in this case, since I already cut them shorter than they need to be in order to maximize the space inside the box, I'm not going to cut in an additional 1/2 to 3/4 inch out of that height to add the dados. So I'm just going to glue and staple the plywood bottom onto the drawer boxes. That's not what I intended to do here. I don't know what happened. It's too hot, I guess. I don't know. Do you ever think about how most everything is just a box, or is that just me? I know that I was just talking about how closet cabinets are basically huge boxes, and then now I'm building drawers, which are also just boxes installed inside of another box. I think I've said this a million times, but if you can build a box, you can pretty much build anything. Anyway, I assembled 4 drawer boxes using pocket holes and screws. So normally I cut dados to install my drawer bottoms, but in this case, since I didn't want to lose any more storage height in these drawers, I just cut 1/4-inch plywood to fit over the bottom. Then I glued and stapled these onto each drawer. You could arrange the drawers however you want. I just thought that 2 deeper drawers might be helpful for like bigger, bulkier items like purses or sweatshirts, and then the 2 shallower top drawers might be handy for smaller accessories like jewelry, watches, scarves, whatever. It's always nice to have variety, I guess. After the drawers were installed in the cabinet, I added some slab-style plywood drawer fronts. So for Dad's closet, I went with face frames and shaker style drawer fronts, but as you can see here, Mom's closet is getting frameless cabinets and slab style fronts. It's much simpler. Part of me feels like maybe this is a bit too plain, but the other part of me actually likes this better than Dad's closet. But don't tell him I told you that. Anyway, now it was time to stain, and I swear this was the worst part of the entire project. I custom mixed a stain 1 part Minwax Simply White and 5 parts Minwax Provincial. So the color here is the same for both Mom and Dad's closets. I stained Dad's in Minwax water-based driftwood, but I've learned that water-based stains on big projects is kind of the worst. So I found a really close oil-based match. It just has to be custom mixed, which is also kind of the worst. So I'm not really sure which is worse, but here we are. After staining, I added a clear coat Minwax polyacrylic. Then I could add the hanging rods to finish these up. I found that hanging the rods centered about 9.5 inches from the back edge and about 3 inches down from the top works pretty well for most hangers. So I drilled pilot holes through the sides at these locations. Then I cut a dowel rod to fit and I pre-drilled a hole in the center of each end. That way I can drive my screws until just the tip sticks out, center my dowel on it, then drive the screw all the way in. So this is how I added my hanging rods into each cabinet, and now they're ready to take over to Mom's. Now obviously before installing, I had to remove the existing wire shelves, putty the holes in the wall, and then I let Mom paint it. But that's pretty boring, so we don't need to see all of that. I apologize in advance because it's really hard to film inside of a closet like this, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. First, I hung the double hanging rod cabinet in the corner by screwing it to the wall studs through the back supports. Then we hung the other wall-mounted cabinet in the other corner the same way. The best thing about installing wall-mounted closet cabinets is not having to cut the baseboard. You just stick it right on the wall. But the tall cabinet sat on the floor, so it did require me to trim away the baseboard so I could butt it against the wall. At least it was just this one small section. Now the cabinets are in, but I needed to build the cubby shelves for this left section and then some shoe racks for the right wall. I waited to build both of these until the cabinets were in so that I could measure for them to fit exactly. I know it's hard to believe, but here we are again, building boxes. When I built my own closet cabinets several years ago, I added some cubby boxes just like this and I really love them. I thought they'd be perfect for Mom's sweaters and purses, and since it's not like a whole tall cabinet, I could use the leftover plywood scraps to build them with, and I had just enough for 3 boxes. I secured these on one side with screws into the adjacent cabinet and then on the other side with screws into the corner wall studs. And finally, for the shoe racks, I built these from some wood scraps and leftover material from previous projects. I used some 1x2s, some 1x6s, and a square dowel. Okay, so not all shoes are the same size or the same style. They might not all fit in the same size rack. So I ended up making Mom 3 different sizes of these. They're all assembled exactly the same. The only difference is the side pieces here. I originally made this one. This fit a bunch of my shoes perfectly, but I wear a lot of very flat and flimsy sneakers. Mom, not so much. So I thought this would work great because it fit my shoes, but it didn't quite fit Mom's shoes. It will fit some of her like really flat, like slip-on dress shoes, but the majority of her shoes are quite a bit thicker, like boot style or wedges. So for that, I ended up making these a little shorter and deeper so that the wedges and the like wider, thicker shoes will fit into here. So basically I made 3 sizes. I made the original taller, skinnier one. I made 2 of these that's kind of like a medium size. This is a 1x6, so it's 5.5 inches tall. This was also a 1x6, but instead of cutting it running this way, I cut it with the grain running this way, so it made it narrower and longer. And then I made this style, which is similar to this one, just a little bit deeper. So I encourage you to grab some of your shoes that you plan to put in here and build this to fit that size and style of shoe. I screwed these into the wall studs on the right side of the closet, and now, finally, my mom has a new and improved closet. Unfortunately, Mom's closet doesn't come with any funny country ham stories like Dad's did, but I do think that it turned out just as good even without the inside jokes. I know it's hard to see in all of its glory here, so I did take a few shots of the cabinets in my shop before I took them over so you can get a better visual. Frameless wall-mounted cabinets are really a great budget-friendly option that can make a major difference in the look and function of a closet. So I hope this gave you some ideas if you're looking to upgrade your own. For now, I think I'm taking a break from closet cabinets for a bit, so be sure to stay tuned to see what other projects are coming down the pipeline. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy building!